Everybody catch your breath? Life is busy, isn't it? We are in part 3 of a series called Margins, and I am just excited to talk to you today about this again and see if we can't take some things, some principles from God's Word, what Jesus taught, apply to our life, and it will help us out. So here's what we've been saying. Margin is, here's how we define it, it's the amount available beyond what is needed. It's the extra, it's the reserve, it's the space between my current pace and my limit. So again, Timmy, I can use you as an example. So if I want to get up in his grill, this is a little too close for comfort. See how he grabbed me? He like pulled me in to make it tighter. When we're talking this close, there's not enough margin, man. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to talk to somebody this close. Yep. And you know who those people are in your life that when you get here, you're talking to them, it just is uncomfortable, man. And you're like, dude, push back. I need some space. I need some margin. I can talk to him like this. We could have a conversation. I mean, he's going to feel my breath in his ear. But that's not cool. It's also not cool if I put too much space between us. When there's too much, man, he and I can't have that relational connect here. So thanks. If I want to run a race and I'm going to run a 5K and it's 3.2 miles, man. If I take off and sprint because of the way my body's wired, I can't sprint for 3.2 miles. So margin is that space between my pace and my limit, my current pace and my limit. What we talked about last week was how we need this in our margin in our time. All of us get some time, whatever that time is. Some will live to be 20, 30, 40, 70, 90. We're all going to have a designated amount of time, and all of it will get spent. All of it. And somebody's going to determine how you spend that time. We can't just bank our time. We can't just go down to the local time bank and go, hey, you know, this was a really slow week for me. I'm gonna deposit 20 hours so that next week I know what's coming. Man, it's going to be a brutal week. I'm going to go withdraw 20 hours of time. It's all going to get spent. And that clock just keeps ticking. It just keeps coming. So we better establish some margin. You want to have an awesome marriage? You better have awesome margin. You want to be an incredible parent? You have to develop margin. If all you're doing is shuffling the kids to the next event, to the next sporting thing, to the next recital, to the next practice, to the next whatever, man, you're going to move out. You're going to miss out on the opportunity to invest relationally into their life because you have no margin. All right, so today, thank you. So today, here's what we're going to talk about. Because when your closet starts to look so full, your life starts to look so full that you can't cram anything else in. And you have no more room to put one more piece of clothing in. I mean, it is so full, so crammed. Then you have missed out on margin. And it's one thing for our closet. I think we've got a picture of that closet for us. It's one thing for our closet to look crammed full of stuff. I mean, there's no way she can even shut this door. There's like jeans or something hanging over the top of the door. There's a book bag on the handle. There's stuff down on the floor. There's way too much in here. And when our life starts to look like that, it's not okay. And again, I told you last week, I'm okay. If you've got a messy closet, I really don't care. It doesn't bother me. What bothers me is when our life looks messy like this. And our life is so full that we can't breathe. We have no margin. Because when it comes to relationships, when it comes to our schedule, when it comes to our time, when it comes to our finances, if there's no margin, and our life that we're living is so full that you couldn't hang one more item without it collapsing, then it's too much. So today, I'm going to talk about a subject we love talking about at this place. Money. There you go. If you go, man, this is my first time, or I haven't been in a while, I haven't been to church in forever, and man, sure is the world. I don't go to church because every church I go to talks about money. Welcome to the fellowship. We're going to talk money today. Now, let me put you at ease. You ready? I'm not going to ask you for anything. I'm not going to ask you to increase your tithe. We're not going into a capital campaign. There's no ask of you today. None. Zero. But here's what I want to do. I want to do something for you today from the Word of God that could potentially be life-changing in how your home functions in relationship to money. So if you're single, if you're a student, you're college age, man, you got to get this today because it will set a trajectory for you that's game changer. If you're in the middle of parenting right now, then you got to get this, what we're going to share today. So we said that last week our time is limited, but there's an interesting facet to what we're going to talk about today because money's so similar to time. Money is limited. Now, you may see some superstar on TV or in the movies or somebody and think, man, they've got an unlimited resource. At some point, that resource runs out. So we have a limited resource of money, a limited access to money. And although time and money may be similar, there is a major difference between the two, and that is simply that you cannot deposit time and come back and withdraw, but you can withdraw money. Now, very interesting. How do you do that? For some, if you're maxed out, you can go and borrow more. So I'm going to teach you today. You can go borrow more. You could max yourself out at the limit. You could be making X amount of money, spending X amount, and then still go borrow more. And your closet will be so crammed full. Financially, you'll be so full, there will be no margin. And I just want to say, and I think you all know this, it is no fun to see a family or a person, a couple, an individual that's so leveraged financially they can't even enjoy what they have because of the stress on finances. So if you're a Christian today, whether you're watching by way of internet, you're sitting in the room, you're a Christian today, you have to get what we're going to talk about today. You have to. It's not negotiable. You just got to get this. If you're thinking about being a Christian, I think what this will be, and I put it in my notes because I thought about how I wanted to say it to you. If you're not a believer, you're not a follower of Christ, you're thinking about it, you're testing the waters, I pray that today is motivational for you. That's it. I'm giving you a motivational talk. For all the believers in the room, we got to get this. This is that significant because there is a relationship between us, our money, and God. I'm going to show you that in Scripture. There's a direct relationship. And if your finances have you in a place where you have no breathing room, you have no margin, it is going to affect your relationship with God. Now, culture wants us to believe something that the Word of God does not teach. And it's this truth. Or this principle, this cultural principle, not a truth. That standard of living, if you will, synonymous with quality of life. Standard of living, and I put up here, it does not equal the quality of life. But culture wants you to believe that a standard of living and quality of life go hand in hand. Now, this is a really big deal as we start out on our talk today, that you make sure you get this, because every single day, marketing and advertising people are going to attack you on this issue right here. That your standard of living and your quality of life go hand in hand with one another. So in other words, if I raise my standard of living, I raise my quality of life. Or if I raise my standard of living, for example, I raise my standard of living because I got to have that new truck, that new car. I raise my standard of living because I've made a few more dollars. I got a raise, and so I'm going to buy something new, like a new house. I'm going to move out of a 3.2 into a 4.3, or from a 4.3 into a 6.4. And we're thinking, if I could just drive a better car, if I could just have a better pair of shoes, whatever it is, if I could raise my standard of living, somehow I'm going to inevitably raise my quality of life. I just want to say to you, and I know you know this, I know how smart you are, I know how educated you are. You are a smart group because you're here today, and that tells me how smart you are. Quality of life is not determined by standard of living. The two don't go hand in hand. They just don't. It's not true. Marketers want you to believe it is. Think of it this way. If you and your spouse want to increase your standard of living, and your standard of living continues to grow, you make more income, maybe you got a different job or a better paying job or whatever that looks like, and you got more stuff than you've ever had before, and your standard of living has gone up, does that just necessarily make you happier? Some of you in this room understand what I'm saying today. You can raise your standard of living, by the way, through debt. You can increase your standard of living by swiping a credit card, taking out a second mortgage, going out and getting a personal loan. So you can raise your standard of living, but it does not equal quality of life. Everybody get that? Let me say it this way. If you're married in this room, would you rather have a horrible marriage but drive the greatest car on the road in Lake County? Or would you rather drive a used minivan and have an awesome marriage? I mean, it's that simple. Anybody driving a used minivan? Yeah, I get it, man. Or maybe you're driving a 2010 Honda Accord rather than a 2020 Honda Accord. Everyone in this room, if you are married, you would say, I'd rather have a great marriage and drive a lesser car. Is that fair? So I don't think anybody's going to leave this place and just go, oh, man, I really love my spouse, but if I could have that new Raptor truck, I'd sacrifice her for the truck. Nobody is doing that. You're an idiot if you're thinking that. You need marriage counseling. So standard of living, does everybody get it? Standard of living does not equal quality of life. Do you get that? All right. At this point, we must own it in our own lives that there is a difference between standard of living and quality of life. So creating margin financially in our lives may lower your standard of living, but interesting, could increase your quality of life. When you create a standard of living that could come down, it works just the opposite of what culture wants to sell you. Your quality of life could go up. Here's what I know about us in this room today. Every one of us in this room are living on a percentage of our income. All of us are. Whatever it is you make, and there's different income levels in here. There's retirees in here. There's people that are working an hourly job. Some are in salary. Some make $20,000 a year, some $40,000 a year, some $100,000 a year. I get that. There's a diversity and a range in this room. But for all of us in this room, we are working on a percentage, or we're living on a percentage of the income we make. And yet most of us in this room never think about the percentage. I'm going to talk to you about that as we go through this. Secondly, here's what I know about us. Most people think that if I had just a little bit more, things would be better or fine. If I just could make a little bit more, man, it'd free me up. You're convinced that if you had a little bit more, because things are so tight financially right now, so if you had just a little bit more, listen, we've chosen whatever that percentage is. Whether you did it consciously or unconsciously, you've chosen what the percentage is, and we have a mentality that if I just got a little bit more, if I made just a little bit more, if my wage went from $10 to $12, if I went from $15 to $20, if I went from $20,000 to $30,000, if I went from $75 to $90, if I just made more, things would just be better. I think majority of people think that way. Thirdly, that you felt the same way that you feel today when you made less? Now, it's gotten quiet in here. By the way, I'm not going to dive into anybody's personal finances today. But I know that when we talk about these types of issues, we all are living from a similar foundation. You felt the same way that you felt 10 years ago. Man, 10 years ago you thought, I only make this amount of money if I could just get some more. And over 10 years, you've gotten more. Your income's gone up, and in 10 years, your income's gone up, but now you still feel the same way. Man, if I could just make a little bit more. Oh, man, I made $10 an hour 10 years ago, and now I'm making $12, and $12's just not enough. I got a $2 increase over 10 years. If I could just make $14. And I made $50,000 10 years ago, and if I could just make $70 now. And the financial pressure changes. And we think, we'll just be, if I could just get a little bit more, if I could squeeze a little bit more in, everything will be okay. And unfortunately, most of the time, it never changes. It never changes until we make a change. Sometimes we're forced to make a change. Sometimes we make a change consciously. So for every season of life that are going to watch or listen to this sermon today, whether you're a Jesus follower or not, I want to help you with something in your personal finances. So I'm going to put a graph up on the screen. It's just going to be 2 lines. So going up the left side of the line is going to be money. Going down the right side is time. Does this make sense to everybody, whether you're a financial planner or you're not? So we're going to go in increments. This is not a designated amount. It could be by hundreds of dollars. So that could be 0, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. It could be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. It could be 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50. You could do it in 30. You could go 30, 60, 90, 120, 150. Everybody get? This is not a designated amount. You can fill in your own. And then there's a period of time, whatever that time is. This could be days, weeks, months, years, decades. Okay? So this is the graph from which I want to work with you today and give you an incredible biblical principle. So you got money going up, coupled with time going down the graph. So, in an ideal world, we would have a line on here that shows giving is increasing. So we're going to give you kind of what I mean by this, and maybe this doesn't always happen in your life. But on this graph, so give me that next picture, it's got income. So wherever you start in your income, again, this could be, hey, I've increased from $100 every month to $200 to $300 to $400 to $500 a month, or maybe it's $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 over years. So over this period of time, most of the time, and again, this is just an illustration, I recognize that most of the time, probably income goes like this sometimes for people. Maybe it's a result of something that happened that you had a massive decline. I get all this. But for sake of illustration, let's just say that over a period of time, your income increases. Everybody with me? If you don't get this first part, you'll never get the biblical principle. So I got to make sure you get this part. So let's just say that for the most part, we have an income graph that is going up. Then we have what's called a spending graph that oftentimes looks like this. So if you made $1,000 at your starting point, maybe you spent $1,000. And as income went up, maybe you spent a little bit more, but there is, in between these two, is where I want to talk to you. It's margin. Do you see that? So there's margin between my income and my spending. So if we put this into thousands, that's about a $5,000 a month income, and my spending would be somewhere around $2,200, $2,300. Could you imagine if you lived with $5,000 a month coming in and you only spent $2,200? You'd have $2,300 a month left over. Now, would that be some margin that could improve quality of life? You're not sure whether to amen at this point or not. The answer would be yes. This is a good thing. This is a good thing. You want to have some margin in here. Unfortunately, all too often, here's what happens. As our income goes up, our spending goes up. So let me see that next graph. Actually, that's one graph too far. Is there a graph in between there? We're spending, there it is, right there. This is typical of American lifestyle. My income continues to climb. I now make $5,000 a month, and I'm now spending $5,000 a month. I'm not saying it's you, but you get it, don't you? In my profession, that right there is what generates a whole lot of stress in marriages, right there. There's no margin. Margin's gone. But if you were to hit the, what I'll just call uh-oh graph, and it was the one you just saw a minute ago, it's when spending exceeds our income. So if you made $5,000 in a month, but you're spending $6,000, I mean, this basket can only hold so much until it's just going to fall apart. Your closet you can only cram so much into the trunk of your car before you can't shut the door. Your life can only handle so much capacity. The limit is maxed out, and you're going to falter. Something's going to collapse. Something's going to go wrong. And when it comes to our personal finances, when we are spending more than we're making, that's a problem. And something's got to give. Now, there are people in this room that will watch this sermon that will think, yeah, but, and I'm going to leave this up here, if I just made, and you throw out whatever that number is. I mean, if you're a $75,000 a month annual income in your family and you think, well, man, if we just made, Pastor, if we made $200,000, I'd get a limo and I'd ride around with the sunroof open and I'd just start tossing dollar bills out at everybody. That's how you think. See, your spending goes up as you make. That's why I asked the question on the front end, what is the percentage that you live on? And again, most in this room probably can't even answer that question just sitting here because it's not something we consciously think about. This percentage is at about 110, 115%. Some are running at 95 to 100%. And man, if a tire blows out on the car and you're living, can you go back, Chris, to the slide before that's got income and spending running line? If you're living here and a tire goes out, what do? You get out the plastic, don't you? You had a mechanical failure in that 2010 Honda Accord you're driving, and you're living maxed out. How are you going to afford to fix it? Something unexpected comes and you're living at this, let alone at the uh-oh graph. So, when our spending and our income are close to each other, this is going to generate stress. And we identified in week number 2 of this that stress is an indicator for us where relationships will be harmed. Remember this illustration? I stand on the edge of the seat. I mean, if I'm standing on the edge, I fell the one time. I mean, I start to come your direction. It's trouble. I'm bigger than you. It will hurt. And then when I stand on, if I stood on the edge and preached the whole time, my focus narrows. I fell on you last time, Rudy. My focus narrows because I'm thinking, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall. And the moment I go over the edge, I got a problem. I get hurt, you get hurt, people get hurt. So, when we live with spending and income running simultaneously, we're going to have challenges, and stress is going to come. Now, for all of the people that work for Visa and MasterCard and American Express, for those who are part of SunTrust and Chase Manhattan and whatever whatever the financial institution and credit cards and debt people that you are connected to, let me just say this. These are not monsters that work there. They're people. And for the most part, these people don't even know who you are. you're just a number. Pastor, if you listen to the way she calls me, that girl from Visa calls me to pay that Visa credit card off, and I keep telling her I don't have the money for it. Listen, she's not your enemy. She doesn't even know you. She's simply just doing her job. And I'm going to use a biblical term here. Those employees aren't your master. They don't want to own you. But you and I oftentimes facilitate a relationship with someone we don't even know because of the habits we have that generate a spending and an income that runs so tight with no margin that we find ourselves having enemies over the phone. And we found our way into a slave-like relationship with an organization or a person at that organization. And we have spent our way, this is the American way, we've spent our way right into slavery. Now, because you're running so tight, or maybe you're even over the limit on your spending from your income, you can't go to eat at that place. You can't go to vacation at that place. You can't drive that vehicle you want because there's no margin. And pretty soon we become a slave to the debt. The bills begin to run our life. And our phone calls are constantly bombarded with creditors trying to receive payment. To which some would say, but Pastor, had there not been a housing collapse, had there not been the economy shift, whatever those things are. Listen, let's not blame someone else for our own personal spending habits. I'm not trying to be ugly to you, but if we prepare on the front end for what's going to come, maybe we can avoid some of this stress. And what's interesting is, and I hear it just like you do, there are people that blame a president or a past president for their current financial situation, when really ultimately it lands on us. It's our own personal choices. So, with that in mind, Jesus had a lot to say about this topic. He had a lot to say about this subject. And today I want to focus on one of his statements, his teaching. Because about 2,000 years ago, Jesus predicted that we would be in this situation. Did you know that? He predicted that we would be in a situation where spending and income would run parallel, and for some people, spending would exceed income, and there would be no margin. So here's what Jesus did. In one of his teaching times in the book of Luke, so in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, the third letter in the New Testament, Luke gives us some interesting insight from the teaching of Jesus that's going to be just, whoa, maybe you've even heard this, but it's just going to blow us away today. See, in Luke chapter 15, Jesus teaches about, in the 15th chapter, he teaches about something called the prodigal son. To which, if you're familiar with the Bible in any way, you've been around to hear any of the Bible talk, the prodigal son is such a story that we all like. Man, a son goes nuts, he goes off, he blows the inheritance, he returns home. There's a disagreement over the other brother's acknowledgement that we should even accept this brother back, but dad says, hey, our son that was dead is now back. We really like, and I've taught from Luke 15, it's an incredible passage. But when you turn the page to Luke chapter 16, something very interesting happens. Jesus, on the heels of teaching about the prodigal son, turns his teaching to talk about a manager, a guy that's stewarding a business, and he kind of loses it all. And Jesus is talking about how this guy stewards money, and he draws the entire parable to one conclusion. It's very interesting. Here's what he said in conclusion to how we should handle money. Here it is. Luke 16, verse 13. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. And this is brilliant from the very lips of Jesus. Maybe you can relate to this. Maybe you've worked in a place that has two bosses, for example. Maybe you've got like a national corporate boss and you've got a local boss, and maybe sometimes those two aren't on the same page, and you're frustrated, go, man, I'm not sure who to please. Should I please the corporate boss? Should I please my local boss? And man, it drives you nuts. And when Jesus comes along on the heels of teaching about a manager fired because of his inability to manage the company money well, Jesus gives a conclusion about money by saying, nobody can serve two masters. You'll either hate one and love the other, or you're going to be devoted to one and despise the other. And so tension, we feel this tension rise in us. Well, which one am I going to serve? Which boss do I follow? Which master am I going to comply with? And Jesus drops the bomb. At the end of the verse, he says, you cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. Ouch. Oh, you can't serve God and be enslaved to money, Jesus said. Well, Pastor, don't you think that this is a reference to God and the devil? I mean, you can't serve God and the devil. I mean, I've heard people break it out that way. That's not the context. The context is money management. So if you find yourself in this challenge today, and you may not even want to admit it, you just know in your heart your palms are sweaty right now, you wish I would stop talking, you're ready to go home already, and you go, okay, I just got to endure the next few minutes. How long is this going to be? Can I just put you at ease? Man, just embrace this and make a change. Who wants to live like this for the rest of their life? Well, I can blame everybody else. I can blame President Obama for my problems. I can blame President Trump for my problems. Stop. Come on, let's be real. If income has risen, by the way, I recognize for some income has dropped. And if spending was here and your income dropped, you got a problem. I get it. So I want to help you. I want to come alongside of you and support you, because it's not your mortgage company. It's not your Visa rep. It's not that creditor that's the enemy. It's not what Jesus said. The problem is you can't serve one of two masters. You're going to love one and hate the other. You're going to despise one and embrace the other. You can't serve God and be enslaved to money. So if you're upside down today financially, here's what I know according to Luke 16:13. You got a problem serving God. Whew, that one hurts. It's not me saying it. I'm the messenger today. I want to encourage you, though, because I think there is a way out of this. Because Jesus teaches to push back from the edge and not spend all of your money. So here's what I'm going to do. I got just a few minutes before 11 o'clock. I'm going to give you some steps. Now, I'm going to run a risk here, because I think in our culture, most people don't follow any steps, and I'm about to give you some, knowing that for most, hey, what am I having for lunch? But I think it's going to land with some, and I think it'll just take one step for some. So I'm gonna roll the dice, if you will, and hope that you catch it. Step number 1, decide. Simple. You have to decide, is your financial situation working for you or not working for you? Again, if you're a $30,000 a year employee and you're spending $29,500, my guess is it's not working. Is everybody okay with that? Does that make sense? Because if something hits and it's $600, where's the other $100 come from? Maybe mom or dad loan it to you. Maybe a friend does. Maybe one of your children do. You get it. When you make 30 and you're spending $29,500 and you've got a hiccup like a transmission goes out and now you got $2,200 expense, we just leverage that with debt. Everybody get what I'm talking about? I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? This is how we live. So step number one, I'm going to challenge you to decide, and that may be the only step you need today. Decide that your quality of life needs to increase. And the only way to do that is maybe for you to think differently about how you spend. Bring down your standard of living so that quality of life can go up. If you make $1,000 a month and you're spending $700 a month, and you got a $300 margin in there, your stress level is going to be much lower. I think you get it. I'm just trying to think of every way I can say it to you so that you get this. So step number one, decide. Step number two, set a goal. The goal that I would encourage you to set is a percentage goal. Now, I'm a Dave Ramsey financial peace guy. I've taught it multiple times. I practice it in my own family. But I'm going to encourage you to think about a percentage in your spending. And there's a reason for that. And hopefully you'll get it as we go. So think of it this way. If you make $30,000 a year and you're spending $29,000, you're living, let's just call it 99%. You got 1% margin. That's tough. But if you make $30,000 and you only spend $25,000, by the time you pay your rent or your mortgage, your gasoline, your food, your insurance, whatever it is, and your total bills annually are $25,000. Now, whatever 25 to 30 is, whatever that percentage is, there's your margin. That's the percentage. So let's just say, and again, I'm sorry, I'm not doing the math in my head right now. Let's say that's 10%, so you're living on 90%. It's probably about 30% of 20%, though, actually, now that I think about it. Set a goal for what percentage you want. And again, this is not about where you're living, but what you want to do. So you're going to decide and you're going to set a percentage. Hey, if I make $30,000 a year, I'm going to figure out a way to live on 70%. Whatever that number is, I'm going to have a 30% margin in my giving income to expense. Okay? So I just want you to set a goal, whatever that goal is. Then step number 3, I want you to start to spy on your money. 60 days, that's it. Spy on your money. Every time you go to the donut shop and get a donut, record it. Every time you drive through and get a coffee, record it. Every time you pay the rent or the mortgage, record it. Every time you fill up with gas, record it. Spy on your money for 2 months, for 60 days, and figure out where is your money going. Because you can only serve one of two masters. And if you're enslaved financially, you're struggling to serve God. Jesus said, you can't do it. So spy on your money. Darlene and I, when I put this together, I said to her, hey, starting January 1, I want to spy on our money for 60 days. I'm right in the middle of doing it. It's embarrassing when I go, hey, I stopped at Donut King. I know we didn't have the money. It blew our budget, but I needed an apple fritter. I haven't bought an apple fritter in the last 3 or 4 days, so it's all good. Spy on your money. Every penny, where's it going? Because if you don't know where your money's going, you'll never determine what that percentage is, and you're going to keep living hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck. I know you get it. I know you're an intelligent group. You get it. This is going to have such a significant impact on the home. Your parenting will change. Your children will see it differently. I mean, think about it. Do you want your children to grow up handling money the same way you did? I mean, that could be good. It could be bad. As a Christian, we don't have an option. We're called to steward well. So God has given us an income. Here's the challenge. Our greedy little hands get on that income. And we want something more for ourselves. And we think that spending my income somehow increases my quality of life. So once you've decided, once you've set a goal, now you start to spy on your money. Step number 4, cut spending. Start working towards that percentage goal. So if you're living right now at 98% or 95% or 90% and you want to be at 80%, Start cutting spending. Monitor for 6 months or for 2 months. Start to measure what's going on and figure it out. And you can't cut spending until you know what you're spending. And let me just say this. I want is always better than I owe. I heard some laughters and some, oh yeah. I want that new car is better than I owe $450 a month on a lease payment for that new car. It just is. I want to take that trip, but I need to stay home and steward my money so that maybe one day I can go on that trip and actually afford it. Pastor, you don't understand. That trip is going to be to Las Vegas, and I'm going to take some of my money, and I'm going to use it to try to make more money. I get it, man. If all of us would do that, we probably would be better off. Joke. That was a joke. I want a new pair of shoes. They're $110. I want is always better than I owe. Matter of fact, I love it when you say things back to me. Can you say, do we have it on the screen? Let's say this phrase together. Here we go, on 3. 1, 2, 3. I want is better than I owe. Listen, if you're a high school kid, middle school kid, college kid, single, graduate, tradesman, I promise you, if you'll apply this right here, it'll change your life. I want is better than I owe. And there are enough adults in this room that will say, amen, Pastor. If they could get it, this will help them. Thanks. I'm old enough to say that of myself as well to many of you. With 3 kids, 2 in college, 1 professional, I want is better than I owe. Step number 5, develop a debt retirement plan. I'm not even going to spend a bunch of time here. You may need to get a financial planner involved. There are people out there, there's money coaches, all that stuff. But if you can't get step number 1 down and you can't make a decision and then start setting a goal and figuring out what percentage you're going to live at, it doesn't matter. You're not going to plan for retirement. And I just had with one of our teammates here on our staff that's young, I just had a talk with them. Barbara and I actually were talking with them this week, just talking about how important it is to establish some good spending trends now so that you feel the effects of it somewhere down the line. We talked about it in our staff meeting on Tuesday, I think, didn't we? Did we talk about it Tuesday, David? We were talking about setting aside money, the Dave Ramsey principle. I said we had a 19-year-old in our staff meeting. Wherever she's at, she's probably in the room somewhere, or is she upstairs? Danielle, she's upstairs. We got a 19-year-old, and I said, listen, if you'll take $1,000 of your income, which she doesn't have right now, but if you'll take $1,000, put it into a money market account, let it grow with simple interest, compound interest, never touch that money. Look at the Dave Ramsey principle. Just wait till you're 65 years of age. $1,000 right now at 19. When you're 65 years of age, it'll be worth about $700,000 to $800,000, and you don't have to do anything. It's called compound interest. To which you go, whew, man, if I could go back to being that age and put $1,000 away, I would do it. Listen, if you're 64, you're not going to have compound interest by 65. It's not going to happen. But what if we could teach another generation? Because here's what I know. I've been in church work long enough. I'm watching. I read I read a lot of blogs and listen to a lot of podcasts. The decline of the church's giving is overwhelming in this nation. Why? Because spending's gone up in the families. Income and spending are running parallel, and the churches are struggling financially. So what if we taught another generation how to do it right? What maybe our generation missed. All right. Watch what I'm about to do. You're going to like this. All of you watching by way of internet, thanks for joining in. We love you. We're so glad you joined in. If we're your church, because I know a lot of you call us your church, I want to encourage you to participate. Send us how we can pray for you. Send us how we can be a part of your life and bless you and minister to you. We think the world of you, and we're so honored that you would join in. And if you want to be a part of this ministry financially and giving, you can click right on our website and do so. But we want you to know we love you. Peace out. Have a great week. See you next Sunday.